Hey everyone! So in this video and possibly the next one, we're going to review everything that you guys studied in the quadratics unit. So on your exam, there are going to be three topics. The first one is finding the vertex, the second is graphing, and the third one is factoring. Now maybe I should have put these last two in the opposite order because graphing will be for both vertex form and standard form. So this will be for both vertex form and for standard form. And we'll review those in a minute. Factoring will only be for standard form. And finding the vertex will only be for vertex form. Okay, so these will be the three types of questions that you will be asked on your exam. Now, everything here, some of this might be a little bit small for you guys to see. I couldn't really do better than this in terms of lighting. But everything I write, I'm going to try and write big enough that you guys can see it and copy it down. So you don't need to write this stuff down. But what we're going to do is we're just going to break down each of these three things. So the first topic is finding the vertex. So first of all, let's review vertex form of a quadratic function. So vertex form will be written like this: y equals a times x minus h all squared plus k. All right, that's a plus sign, not a t. All right, so that's vertex form of a parabola. Now, there are a few different things here. Now, you'll notice that when we were talking about linear functions, we had y equals mx plus b. Now, in an actual question, y and x don't change. You'll still have y and x in the question, but m and b will be replaced by some number, right? So similarly, for quadratics, y and x will still be there in the quadratic function, but a, h, and k will all be different. All right, so they'll all be replaced by some number or a group of numbers. So, for example, you could have y equals 2x minus 3 all squared plus 5, something like that. All right, so your job when you see an equation like this is you have to identify, okay, 2 is the a value, 3 is the h value, and 5 is the k value. So that's what your job is. If I give you an equation and I say, figure out what for anything, if I've given you the equation in vertex form, the first thing you want to figure out is, okay, what am I looking at? What is a, what is x, what is h? Those are the things that you want to know. Those are the things that you want to figure out. Okay? So, if you're given an equation in vertex form, what do each of these things tell you? A, h, and k will alter the graph of your function. But so basically, a sort of deforms the function. So it'll vertically, well, I don't even need to say vertically. It'll stretch, or contract the function. So basically, if you have your axes there, and then you try to draw a quadratic, and you get something that looks like this. Let's say, okay, so you've got this, sure, that's fine. But let's say you have also been asked to plot a second function on top of it, or you can look at two graphs and see one of them looks like this, and one of them looks like that. So as you can see, they have the same vertex. Well, I've drawn this kind of poorly. This one will go up somewhere like something like that. So you can see they meet at the same point. They meet at the same vertex, but they're of different widths. And so that just means that they have different a values. Same thing with if they have the same width, but they open in the other direction. That's all got to do with the a value. All right, so the a value stretches or contracts the parabola on your graph, and if a, let me write this, if a is positive, then the graph opens up. Graph opens up. Okay, so by that, what I mean is if you've got your axes, then if your a value is something bigger than 0, if it's a positive number, then your graph will open in that direction. All right, and if a is negative, then your graph will open downwards. Graph opens down. So that means if your a value is like -3 or something, then your graph will open that way. It'll look something like that. Okay, so that's what the a value does. And I'll leave this information right here. If you want to copy it down, I think you're missing the end of it. Okay, that should be a little bit better. Okay, so if the a value is positive, the graph opens up, and if the a value is negative, then the graph opens down. Now, what about h and k? So h and k are both coordinates of your vertex, and together they actually make up your vertex. Your vertex is described by these 2 points. Hopefully you remember that your vertex is h, k. Alright, so basically once you can identify what a is, what h is, and what k is, then you can figure out what the vertex is, because the vertex is just the h number and then the k number. So the h value is the x coordinate of your vertex, and the k value is the y coordinate of your vertex. Okay? So those are the different components of the quadratic equation written in vertex form. But now, what about if you've got x minus 3 in here or x plus 3 in here? What's the h value? Is it positive 3, negative 3? It gets confusing really fast. It's really easy to mess up. I and a lot of my classmates in school would have messed this up when we were learning it for the first time. So we're just going to go over that one more time. Okay, so your a value in the equation does not have a negative sign in front of it, right? It's just equals a. No problem. Your k value has a plus sign in front of it. As long as it's not a minus sign, we don't care. The problem comes right in here. The h value has this negative sign in front of it, and it gets really confusing. So if I gave you an equation that looks like this, a lot of people will get this confused really, really easily. Now, our first job is to figure out, okay, which one's a, which one is h, which one is k. And we can see the a value here is the thing that's on the outside of the brackets, so that's the 2. 2 is the a value in this case. All right, the h value we'll come back to in a second, because the k value is easier. The k value is the thing that's on the end. It's not being added to x, it's just the last thing in the line. All right, so if you look up at the original form, you can see there's all this stuff beforehand, and then there's this easy bit at the end, plus some number. And that number is the k value. So here, in our question, we've got all this stuff going on at the front, and then we've got plus 4. That's it. So that means our k value is 4. Now our h value here, it depends, well, you can see where it is. The h is the number that's going to be in the brackets with the x and inside the brackets that are being squared. So we see that there's very clearly a 5 in the brackets. So we've got a 5 here. But is it a positive 5 or a negative 5? Now if you notice, in the equation, it says x minus h. So if this said x minus 5, well, that's easy. We've got x minus h, x minus 5. Logically speaking, h and 5 are the same thing. X minus h. I can't really, it's not, I don't have, I'm running out of space. But x minus h, if I tell you that's the form you're looking for, and then I tell you, okay, x minus 5, what is h? Then it's fairly easy to see that h is equal to 5. But we don't have minus 5, we have plus 5. So you can try and remember that if it doesn't have a minus sign here, that your h value is negative. The other way you can think of it, if you don't like it that way, the other way is a little bit more complicated, but it's basically that it's always going to be x minus something, right? But like we talked about, if you're removing negativity from, your life, let's say, if you're removing negative people or negative thoughts or whatever, then you're becoming more positive. So if you are removing, subtracting something negative, then overall what you're doing is really you're making your life or your situation more positive. All right, so if you subtract a negative, that's the same thing as just adding. So x plus 5, that's the same thing as x minus negative 5. All right, now that's a bit more complicated kind of an explanation for it. So if it's easier for you, just remember that the sign on the h, whether it's positive or negative, is just the opposite of the sign in the brackets. So if you've got a minus sign here, your h value will be positive. If you've got a plus sign here, your h value will be negative. Okay? So that's the breakdown of an equation in vertex form. So now for this example, if I asked you to find the vertex of such an equation, or of such a parabola, then all you have to do is read off the h value and the k value, and that is your vertex. So if we just look, we've got an a value, we've got an h value, and we've got a k value. All right? So it's fairly straightforward. You've got your h value, you've got your k value, all you need to do is read it off. Our h value is negative 5, and our k value is positive 4. So the vertex of this parabola is negative 5, 4. All right, hopefully you guys are remembering some of this from before. As we go through the rest of this, I'll still go into some detail because as we progress it gets more and more confusing, but I might not go into as much detail as I've gone with this because it's getting more and more recent. Quadratics we were doing in March and it's May now, so it hasn't been that long, but linear functions that we were talking about last time, it's been ages since we did that, so I wanted to cover that in detail, just like I wanted to cover this in detail. All right, so this is vertex form. Don't overthink it. We'll talk about graphing in another video, I think. But actually, no, we'll talk about it very briefly here, and then we'll pick up in the next video with standard form. All right, so let's say we keep this equation, this y equals 2 times x plus 5 all squared plus 4. All right, so I'll just rewrite it up here a little bit smaller. Y equals 2x plus 5 all squared plus 4. And now what we want to do is we want to draw our Cartesian plane. Hopefully for your exam you will have a Cartesian plane already drawn. Also remember you can bring a calculator to your final exam, okay? So you don't have to worry about doing this math by hand. So we've got a y up there, we've got an x over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, whoa, that's not 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't really have room for 7, so that's 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2, 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6 and negative 7. Make sure you number your axes on your exam. There will be like 1 mark for all of that stuff. And if you're missing some of it, you lose half of that mark. And if you're missing all of it, like the numbers and the axis labels and stuff, then you lose that full mark off your graph. Okay, so if the numbers aren't there, I haven't found the graph paper template yet. So if you don't have the numbers on it, make sure you write the numbers on. All right, now we know from this that our vertex is negative 5, comma 4. All right, there's a negative sign in there. I'm going to make that a bit more clear because that's the whole point that we're trying to get across. Negative 5, comma 4. So basically what you want is you go over 5 units in the negative x direction. You find negative 5 in x and positive 4 in y. So something like right about there is your vertex. All right, so that's where you would plot your vertex. Now, just for the sake of this particular equation, just the way I've set up this graph, I'm going to actually change the a value. I'm going to make it negative 2 instead of positive 2. And just because I'm making that change, it's a different question. We will pick up by graphing this function up here, y equals negative 2 times x plus 5 all squared plus 4 in part 2. All right? See you there.